Join me in welcoming Mark Stellman.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topic. Oh, or Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. First off, who here has children? I know some of you do. Okay. And then who here has friends who either have children or are thinking about having children? So today we're going to talk about friends who have children. And so let me first start off by saying kids are great. I don't have any, but I hear they're great, and it can be a very rewarding experience, so I don't want to antagonize those who do have it. If this is all meant a little bit tongue-in-cheek or in jest. So please keep that in mind. But sticking with the theme of the meeting, negativity, perhaps I'm misinterpreting it a little bit, but when you have friends who are, and when you have friends who start having children or thinking about having children, and you don't have any, your relationships with them can change a little bit, and the dynamics of your friendships can become a little different, and can be a little bit frustrating. And so I always want to, I have a couple friends who have already had children, and I have and one or two now who they're ready. They're like, oh yeah, we want to try and start having kids. And some of them just got married or have only been married for maybe a year or two, and I want to say, what's the rush? You don't have to have it just yet. And part of that's me being a little selfish too. So what happens when your friends have kids? So going out, for instance, changes completely. First of all, getting them to even go out with you can be asked because they got to find a babysitter or find the parents to watch the kid. A lot of times, maybe you guys actually do end up making plans, but then if the kid gets sick, oh, we can't go out, Junior has a cold or something like that. And sometimes they'll just tell you that when they actually don't want to come out. Mm-hmm. So when maybe you do actually get them to come out, well, then it's difficult for them to stay up late many times from what I've seen. They are used to going to bed, usually probably not long after the kid goes to bed because they're so exhausted from the day and working with their child. So 8 o'clock hits and they're like, what do you guys think? Should we call it a night? And you're like, we just got going, man. Like, why do you want to stop so soon? And then the other thing too is that I've heard is like, we just want to go to bed. Like we've done trips before. Not to segue too much into my next topic, but we've done trips before, and our friends who have kids retire a little bit early, and we're like, well, why? You don't have the kid with you? Like, why do you want to go to bed so early? And they're like, oh, well, we can actually get a good night's rest. We don't have, she's not with us, so we can actually go to sleep and get a good night's rest. We don't have to worry about putting her to bed and waking up with her and all this sort of thing. And so finally, when you do go out, even if it's just a dinner, let's say the kid comes along. So lunches and dinners become a little bit different because it always seems like you no longer sit, have a nice meal and a nice conversation. Because one parent's always sitting there messing with the kid, or maybe you got to take them out to go to the bathroom, and so they're constantly conversations get interrupted quite a bit. Although I have seen iPads be pretty effective, but then of course the kids just going like this, and then it can be a little bit more effective. But it can be very frustrating trying to have a conversation with when the kid's screaming, and then they're like, oh, well, can you take her and go take her outside, take her for a walk or something like that? And you're like, okay, and what do you want to be ordered, or should we just get it boxed up to go? It's very frustrating. On top of that, like I said, we like to do couples trips because they're fun. It's a chance to kind of get away and have a shared experience with your friends. Once they have children, it's a little bit more difficult because a simple trip no longer is just everyone pack up and go, because you gotta there's diaper bags and there's snacks and there's all the different accoutrements that go along with having a children and having to cart it everywhere. So a child and cart it everywhere, and so that becomes a little bit more difficult. And then there's certain trips that they're no longer going to be able to come on. So if you're going to go on, maybe there's certain, you're probably not going to bring the kid on a wine tasting trip, for instance. You're not going to go, not that I've done this with my friends before, but you're not going to go on safari probably with a very young child. You don't want to get eaten by a lion or something. And then finally, Oh, and then even when they are there, sometimes again, kind of harking back to the dinner conversation, the difficulties surrounding that. When you have a kid there, it kind of can change the dynamic of the trip, or what you're doing yourself. We talked about, some friends and I, about doing a Belize trip soon, because I went down there for a bachelor's party, and so now we'd like to do a couples trip down there. And so my one buddy who's now is going to have a kid, I was like, Dave, how are you and Caroline aren't going to be able to come on the trip if you guys or had just had a kid? He's like, oh, no, I'll bring it along with. I was like, you can't bring a newborn baby to Belize. Like, it doesn't seem like a good idea. He's like, no, it'll be fine. I'll just put it in my thing, and we'll just do whatever we normally do. I was like, no, okay, let me rephrase this. I don't want you to be coming with a kid. So, and then finally, perhaps, and again, most selfishly, the problem when people have kids, start having kids and you don't, is they have new friends. Because as you can tell by the beginning of my speech, you can't relate to what they're going through. So they tend to have new kid friends. And so when you show up to maybe birthday parties, kid birthday parties, let me tell you, they're fun. When you show up to kid birthday parties, they're like, oh, this is so-and-so, and we just, and they know all about each other, and they sit there and talk about, kid stuff for whoever knows how long, and you're like, cool guys, we used to be friends, remember that time when we did this thing, and they can't, it's different, and so they have these new friends now that you can't really relate to, because you're not going through the same things that they're going through. So, kids can be a lot of fun, and they can be very cute. But when your friends, it's just difficult sometimes when your friends start having children and you don't have any. They're going through something that you can't really relate to. And so selfishly sometimes we find ourselves being a little bit frustrated by that fact, and perhaps even maybe feeling a bit left out, as if we're missing something. But all you can do is be there and support your friends through it, because of course you don't want to discourage them from having, but to be there. So, but it's still important to be there to support them in what they're doing. So, Mr. Kilkes.